Hey guys, GearKid660 here, and right now I'm doing a review on a Type S Blizzard box. It is essentially an Evercool fridge freezer. Uh, those guys are based in Australia, but for the most part, this fridge is made in China. Taking a look inside, you can see at the bottom of the lid, the model number, capacity 41 quarts, power. You can use 100 to 240 volts or 12 to 24 volts. Refrigerant's 134A, and it is made in China, as you can see on the bottom over there. Although the refrigerator is made in China, it does have a SecOp compressor. For those who do not know, SecOp is essentially the gold standard for portable compressors. They were originally Danfoss. I believe they were German, but now they're owned by a Japanese company. But this is a very good compressor, typically found in higher end models such as ARB fridges, which gives this thing a very high value. It is a very reliable compressor, made by a reputable brand name. Having a reputable compressor such as Danfoss in this particular setup is important, primarily because the compressor is the heart of the system. If anything that would possibly break in this system, other than the compressor, it would most likely be the electronics, such as this touchpad and any wiring or so forth. But if you're going to take a look at the primary manufacturers such as ARB and what's it called, Dometic, you can seem to see on several of the models this control layout right here, which is power set plus minus, is generally the same towards all refrigerators. And also this type of normal use and emergency override switch, I think they all come from the same manufacturer, but they have a contract with everyone, and they just put their own, faceplate on top, and just change the color of the LCD background. One of the features on this fridge is that it can be powered via a 12 volt connection, such as this, which I am using an inverter which converts from 120 to 12 volts, so I can use the 12 volt socket. Or this one also comes with the unit, which is an AC plug, and you stick this one in here, and you take this one out and stick this one inside there. Now you ask, I'm indoors right now with 120 power. Why do I not like doing that? The one reason why is because if you constantly, based on experience from on my other fridges, if you constantly take this out, off, on, eventually the prongs inside get worn out and they don't make a good connection anymore. So in general, I like to keep this whatever plug I have currently. I like to keep it that way for a very, very long time. That way there's less wear and tear of the prongs inside. That way it has a constant, steady connection. But yes, it does come with a 120 adapter, which I can connect directly to a 120, and it just works just fine. While we are on the topic of 12 volts, I'm not going to go over the 120 volts anymore. That's basically straightforward. You plug it into the back and you stick it to an outlet. It works just fine. Now, regarding the 12 volts, some very, very cheapo units, they only have a cigarette lighter with no fuse protection, which is absolute crap, but hey, there's a reason why they're super cheap. This one, if you unscrew it, you'll see the fuse right here. So you do have protection. So it's always a good idea to have a spare inside your car. That way, if this thing gets burned out, you can still continue to use your fridge. Explaining this 12 volt connection again, as I know many of you would want to use this for your car. Please note that most 12 volt car connections cut off when you turn the vehicle off. which means if you turn off the key, or if it's a push button start, you turn off the car, the power to your 12 volt socket shuts off completely. So one thing to get around this is you can connect a direct connection from your battery and route it somewhere with inside the car, or if you got a truck, you can put it in your truck bed. Keep in mind that doing this is it takes some electrical knowledge, which is outside the scope of this vehicle, but that is something that you should keep in mind. When you do this, it is generally recommended you have a secondary auxiliary battery. That the reason that you have an auxiliary or secondary battery is so you can plug this one into, and it will just drain that secondary battery, and it won't affect your ability to start the car. Now, having said that, one of the features in this unit is that it has an built-in battery protection, where if it senses your primary or even your auxiliary battery goes below a certain voltage, it would shut off, and that way you still have the ability to restart your car. But having said that, I typically don't trust those particular systems. I prefer to always have a backup battery and run this system low, so that way that auxiliary battery can drop all the way down. Now, having said this, I operate on Murphy's Law, where anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So instead of putting down more money for an auxiliary system, I have invested in a portable battery, such as this Yeti Goal Zero Yeti 400. The reason why I prefer this method over, let's say, a secondary battery is if you do order a secondary battery, that secondary battery is basically just for your car that you installed it in. When you have a portable battery system like this, you can stick it in my, let's say, my parents' SUV, truck, or my brother's car, or so forth. And this allows you to basically, you don't need to modify anything inside your car. All you need is just space to put both of these things inside, like the freezer and the portable battery itself, and you should be good to go. To operate this as a to operate this on the battery over here, just plug it in, turn on 12 volts. As you can see, this turns on. This amber red basically means the refrigerator is off, the compressor is off. I turn it back on right now. Press and hold this. There you go. When it turns green, the compressor is going to turn on or click on. As you can see in this Yeti setup, let me zoom in right now. You can adjust the units. As you can see, the output currently from the cigarette lighter is 47 watts. Watt hours, 1080 watt hours, and right now it's currently at 11.2 volts. I have been using this unit. Now, another thing that pops up is, as you know, this has a 120 volt system as well. You want to use 12 volt as much as possible because it's more efficient. If you use the AC on this battery, it also it drains more. It's less efficient because it has to convert to 120 in order for the system to work. So that is why I prefer to use 12 volts. I'll use the 12 volt whenever possible when I am outdoors. Another thing is that I found out is if you use the AC adapter that comes with the refrigerator itself, it has a tendency to overload. I do not know why, but it trips the breaker or whatever you call it inside this portable battery unit, and I will demonstrate that right now. Okay, now as you can see, the freezer slash fridge is currently set up in the 120 configuration. So for this particular setup, I would press 120. As you see, the freezer LCD panel turns on. Now I will really turn it on right here. Should start up. There, boom. As you can see, it goes into overload. The system starts beeping. As you can see right here, it says overload, and this turned amber, which means the system tripped. Now, I find out that this only happens in the 120 volt connection. It never happens in the 12 volt. So probably something in the AC adapter brick is probably causing a surge of some sort, which this thing cannot handle. If I do plug it into your typical household 120, it does not have a problem. It doesn't trip. It doesn't mess up your power strip or your typical landline, more or less. So keep that in mind. The reason why, like, if someone's gonna ask me why do I want to do it this method, if I have a 12 volt, it's because I can depending on where I go, I use two portable refrigerators or slash freezers. I have a Dometic and ARB combination fridge or freezer. So what would happen, since I obviously don't have two 12 volt inputs, and I don't want to use those adapters where you can use multiple inputs because that could probably overload the system or burn something out, I typically have one of the fridges run on 12 volt and one of the other fridge freezers run on the 120 volt, and the ARB and the Dometic's 120 volts has no problem running on this portable unit. So for some reason, this one causes a surge, which none of the other units that I have portable freezer wise has a surge. So this one would typically have to run based on 12 volt cigarette lighter power only. Some of you may be wondering, alright, so how do I particularly run this setup inside my car? What I prefer to do, since, as I said before, I don't want to mess around with the electrical on my cars. So what I do, if I run two refrigerator and freezer at the same time, both a 120 and a 12 volt, generally this battery doesn't last that long. So let's say while I am driving my car, it is on engine running, which means there is now power to the 12 volt circuit. I have a Goal Zero charger, which basically means while the car is running, it's going to be charging at the same time. Notice that it's not connected to the car. Obviously, it's not lighting up or charging up and down on here. But as this is charging, it is also powering on this unit as well, which this unit charges 55 watts. As you saw earlier, when this turns on, the compressor turns 46 watts. Now keep in mind, once it reaches target temperature, the compressor shuts down, and obviously you are now getting the full 55 watt charge into this this unit. And also the other fridge would also be charging, or hopefully you can get your max charge when both fridge freezers shut off the compressor once it reaches the desired temperature. Now going back to using the fridge freezer, let's go take a look the functions via what's in front of the unit. You obviously have the on and off button, the set button, plus and minus, which controls the temperature, the battery level protection, and whether you want degrees Fahrenheit or degrees Celsius. So let's run through it. Pressing the set button once, you can see that the unit runs on is currently at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and it can go down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's go see the higher limit, which is 50 degrees. I'll bring that down back to 5. set that in. If you press it twice, you can choose between degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit. Press it again, you can choose low, medium, high for your battery protection. I personally choose low since I have an auxiliary battery, so I can drain down the battery all the way down without the refrigerator trying to save itself by shutting down early to save your car battery. Since it's not attached to the car battery anymore, I always use low. Now, if you want to take the risk, you don't want to spend the money on an auxiliary battery, and you don't want to, completely drain the battery on your primary battery inside your car, assuming you don't have an auxiliary or secondary, I suggest you leave this one on high or medium. Do not put it on low. As discussed, one of the unique features of this particular fridge freezer is that you can be able to open from the front or the rear of the unit. So let's say you're in the back of a cab on your truck, you can be able, or your SUV, you can open it from the back here. And if you're going to open up the tailgate, you can also open it from the front here. And also, I forgot to mention that yes, you can completely remove the lid at once. I forgot to mention in the overlooking on the user interface, this switch is essentially the emergency override. Let's say this panel does not work anymore, and let's say it just shut down, the wires aren't working, and you're still in an emergency situation. You need this fridge to operate, obviously assuming you have power. You can override by switching this to the right, and the compressor will continuously run, and at the same time what will happen next is essentially it becomes a freezer that doesn't know when to shut off, obviously because assuming this strip no longer works, you probably have no more T-stat, so you have to watch and maintain, check out the temperature inside the refrigerator itself. The reason is because number one, you don't want to freeze your food. Well, technically that's number two. Number one, primary reason is you don't want to drain your primary battery if it is connected to your primary battery. And number two, you don't over freeze what's inside your contents inside the Blizzard box itself. And if something can get ruined and so forth. So in normal operation, you obviously put this in normal use. Another feature inside the fridge in the front is the USB. You can peel it off. It's kind of like a really cheap, flimsy thing. I'm pretty sure I don't want to do that anymore because obviously it can easily rip out and so forth. But you can charge your phone just as long as you have a USB adapter. And obviously this must have power in order for this USB to work, to power up your device or phone. Another feature on this particular fridge is obviously the sturdy handles. Well, it is made out of plastic. This middle part is made out of metal. The sides are plastic, but they're pretty decent quality plastic. They're not the best. Keep in mind, my golden standard is my Engel / old school ARB fridge, which I can show you right here. This is my old school ARB fridge. It is also an Engel, which is basically an Engel with an ARB badge on top of it. It has a metal, handles. So obviously this is stronger, but let's face it, nobody makes this kind of handle anymore on a fridge other than Engel. So as discussed, this particular handle is decent. If you are really tight for space, there are 4 Phillips head screws, 4 down, so that's 4 total down here, and you can be able to remove this handle. So if you are tight on space, you can shove this fridge deeper inside and have stuff more for other things in your vehicle. Having said that, if you are putting this inside your car, you have to make sure that the side vents, front vent, and has room to circulate. That way you don't starve your compressor of air and it could prematurely wear out on you. So keep that in mind. Although I understand you may want to remove these handles to save some space. Whatever you put on top, make sure, or in front, make sure you have space for air to circulate in the side and front areas of the compressor. Hey guys, some of you may be wondering, okay, what does 41 quarts or what is this thing called? What does 41 quarts or 38 liters get me in terms of refrigerator space? Here we go, looking in the inside. As you can see, you have an LED light to help you if you're going to open this fridge in a dark place or at night. You have baskets, so it's easy to take out food quickly inside this particular setup. As you can see, in this particular row, you have these are kiwis that I wrapped in tin foil. I make my own shakes, and as you can see, it has a cooling element inside this silver stuff, which has dimples on it. Its primary use is so obviously cooling can go throughout the whole entire fridge. For some fridge freezer combinations, they leave this tray essentially there's no cooling element inside, and it acts as a mini fridge where if you, let's say you put this on this particular side on freeze, its cooling effect would eventually reach here and it becomes more or less a mini refrigerator. This one, as you can see, has the cooling element all around the air around the refrigerator itself, so this particular area can freeze items. But keep in mind, since this is more of the smaller area of the cooling side, it takes longer to do it than the primary side does. Looking at this is basically 6 kiwis in a tinfoil bag. I basically batched this for shakes. I don't know if I said that already, but whatever. Got some blueberries. Got a value pack ribeye steak inside here. We actually have a whole lot of frozen fish. I keep a what's it called, a temp gauge inside here. That way I can ensure that I have a physical or manual way of confirming that the freezer is freezing or getting to the temperature that I set it to. I have more or less, takes a whole box, which is basically cookies. I think this is another fish, and this is more of frozen what's it called, berries. Also inside I've got this Kirkland Signature double bacon pack right here, and I have some extra pork big pack in here. So as you can see, you can fit a lot of things into this fridge freezer combination. Obviously you can fit in some assuming you didn't have all this other crap in here, you can also put in your wine, your juice, and so forth, and several soda cans. I'll list the storage capacities for the soda cans and the bottles down below in the description box. But obviously many people put some kind of combination inside this fridge freezer setup. It's not usually just not soda cans, it's usually just not water bottles. But as a mixture of things, this is what you can expect to pop inside, at least what I put inside my fridge freezer combination. Now, what do I recommend this particular fridge freezer setup for? I recommend it for those who want, you're part of the overlanding crowd. You don't want to spend too much on, let's say, an Engel or a Dometic heavy duty or ARB heavy duty ish freezers. This thing will do just fine at significantly less cost. These things go on sale in Costco for, I've seen them down as low as $550. On full price in Costco is roughly around 750-ish or 850-ish. You can also find these things on eBay with the Blizzard Box logo on top. Another thing that I would use it for is grocery shopping. If you go out really far, let's say you need to go to the beach and you want to get fish like I do, and I go to the particular fish markets, since they have really unique fish there, or even fresher fish than you would see in your typical grocery store, and you want to stay there for a little while, or you want to spend the night there since it is the beach, and you need some kind of something that can keep it frozen, I would totally recommend this. Next, I can use this as a backup fridge. Let's say you obviously have a 120 typical fridge freezer like every single family home does, but now you are in a crap hits the fan situation, as you know about like the typical pandemic that's occurring during the during the time of this video. Many people bought a lot of food, frozen food and so forth, but then now what good is it if you have no space to refrigerate / freeze it? You can use this as a backup fridge / freezer. And that's about it. If you got any questions for me, just type them down below and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks, you guys. Bye.